Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a mini book and we're going to make it from a tea bag. This is it. It fits into my mint tin, so it's good for a mini book. And this is literally made out of a tea bag, and I'm going to show you how to make the closure on it, how to make the accordion fold book that comes out of it, some tips and tricks for where I found my artwork to put in there, because I didn't draw that and I didn't print that. So these books are lots of fun, easy to make, and I wanted to find something that we could use you could recycle something from home. And most people have a cup of tea each day, and you would have a tea bag cover that you could use for this book. So instead of throwing it out, take the tea bag cover to your craft room. It's not really made out of a tea bag, it's the cover of the tea bag, and you'll see in a minute. This one I made using my gel press printing press. I never know how to say that. Lots of different colors on that, and I just cut the squares to match the size of the book. I really liked how it turned out. The colors were really amazing once I highlighted everything in black. I'm also going to show you how to do that in this video. So this is the tea bag holder, and let's get started. This is going to be fun. So the first thing that you're going to need is a tea bag holder. I'm not even sure if that's the right name, but you can see that this one was made from exactly this peppermint tea. And what you need to do is very carefully open the tea bag holder and trim the edges. So I just used a ruler and a sharp knife just to make those edges nice and clean, because we're going to be putting a backing onto this, and we just didn't want that furry edge. So wherever you can see a bit of unevenness, just trim it off the best that you can. It's going to be a lot more sturdy once we add more paper to it. It has a really nice feel to the finished book. Measuring it, it's about 6 by 2 1/4, I believe it was. So I'm just measuring that to try and find out what I can use for my front cover. And for your front cover, I would suggest using a heavier cardstock. I really like the look of this one. It's actually double-sided. I decided to use the more florally side. And the heavier cardstock or scrapbooking paper just gives it a nice feeling for the book. It gives it sturdier cover that's always nice to have when you're making your hand-bound books. Using a glue stick, I am literally just gluing the tea bag holder, and I'm going to stick it right down onto the cover piece that I chose. And an idea that I always do is when I know that I have some straight edges, I take advantage of that. So, and it saves a little bit of paper, and I can put the rest of that back in my scrap pile. So line up the corner and the two edges and press it down. If you have a bone folder, it's a good idea to press it down with a bone folder just to give a really nice flat finish. All of this will be covered on the inside, and the outside is going to be this nice pink and red. Simply trim the excess off with a pair of scissors. And again, you could use anything for this cover. If you didn't have any heavier cardstock or scrapbooking paper, you could use a cover from a magazine. You could use newspapers, any that you might have, or flyers even would be interesting. You could just use regular printing paper and decorate it. Lots of different options. What I did on the first one is I used a book page, and then I stamped on it. So now we're wanting to put the creases back where the original tea bag holder was folded. And I'm using my handy dandy scoring tool, which I really like. If you don't have this, you could use just a ruler, mark it out, and use the back of a knife or even a bone folder that I'm using here to crease your edges. And I'm just making sure, we want to make sure that we have a flap that folds over and fits all the pages in. And I was just measuring just to make sure how thick that actually was. And it's about 1/4 of an inch. So we have marked those. And we're ready for the inside piece. Now the inside piece, you could make it as long or as short as you wanted. I made mine 15 1/4 by 2 1/4. And once that's all folded up, it will fit in the book really nicely. I'm just double checking the measurements. And I pre-cut this, but you really want the height to be fairly similar to your book page. And I'm just going to be scoring every 2 1/4 inches because that's where I want all my folds. So I'm moving it to the 0 marker and just do 2 1/4, just easier mathematically than going down the page and getting something wrong. So this one will end up the same as my sample book that I made. So that's extra there, and we're just going to cut off that little bit of extra. If you want, you could have kept it on there, but I decided to take mine off. And then all the pages would be the same size in the book. If you don't have a paper cutter, just use a pair of scissors and snip it off. And now we're just going to go back and forth. We're going to zigzag fold our accordion book. So accordion books are really popular as well. You can make accordion books and add just a front and back cover. You don't have to put it into a tea bag cover, but accordion books are fun. You could make it twice the amount by attaching 2 accordions together. So I found some really fun head shots in a coloring book that I have, and I just started thinking this is going to be a little empowerment journal, and I really like the look of these black and white heads and different hairstyles. And this is the book that I got it from. It's kind of a kooky book. I got it on clearance, which is not a surprise, and yeah, just lots of just different images and things in that book. And I literally use it to cut up. I don't use it to color in or complete the pictures. It just has really interesting things. So find an interesting book, whether it's a coloring book that you like, maybe it's a magazine, it could be an old book, just book pages cut up to paste in here would be nice. You could just draw right on your accordion or stamp on it, color, paint, so many options. Depending on what you're using your book for, you could use it, if you're using it to give away, say for a birthday gift or something, maybe have it all birthday themed. Have it the person's favorite color or something to do with that person, just to make it extra special. If you're making it for yourself, pick a theme that you love and just go with it. Find images, cut them out, draw them, and really make it a book that you can just have fun just flipping through. And honestly, I do that to a lot of my books anyway. I just like looking at my books and flipping through them and yeah, just having some fun with them. Literally just using a glue stick to add my fun little images to my accordion. And I use a magazine as my gluing pad. I always find it a great way to glue and then flip the page. I'm not doing it here, but it makes it really nice, and you always have a clean place to glue. If you really want to be adventurous, you could put images on the other side of your accordion, so when you opened up your book you would have front and back images, and that's a nice thing to do as well. I like leaving the back blank, or at least one square blank, because if you wanted to give it away to somebody, it's a nice place to add a to and from area, add your own special little note to your friend. So that is done, just getting the rest of that sticky glue off. And that's looking really good. I was really happy with how the faces turned out. And with the color that I'm going to be adding, it will pop. I think that you'll really like it. So that's my accordion book. Not too much else to do there. You can trim up the edges if they're not quite in line with the book, just with a pair of scissors like I'm doing there. Again, really make it freeform. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just going to let that dry. And here's my original sample that I was using. And what we need to do next is we need to add some flaps. And this is optional. You don't have to add flaps, but I think it's fun. In the top example, I used pages from a book because that's what I used for my front cover and I wanted to match. Here I found some fluorescent images in that same book that I cut the hairstyles out of. So there's some random pages in that book that are fluorescent pink. And I thought that would be fun to be different from the black and white images, is to have a pop of color. And it seemed to go along with the idea of this little empowerment journal. I decided to use orange waxed linen thread. I really like orange and pink together. I think it really is a great combination. I'm not sure if it goes or if it clashes, but to my eye it's really nice. And I've started using a lot of oranges and pinks in my jelly press printing, and I'm going to be doing some more videos about that again soon. So using my awl, I'm just making 2 holes, and I'm literally just going to be putting the thread through and tying it in the middle. And I don't even use a needle for this. I just push it through, and you could have the knot on the inside of your book or on the outside of the book. That would be up to you to create a different look. So I'm having mine stick on the outside, but again, there's no right or wrong. And I should apologize, this is one of my longer videos, so I understand if people are skimming through this and getting the gist of the how-tos. I hope you enjoy it none the same, or all the same, I should say. And trim off the edges of that thread. I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. Line up the little page that you put in there with the top and bottom of the book or the accordion, 2 little holes, and then tie your thread to it. If you don't have wax linen thread, use anything. You could use just regular sewing thread, cotton thread, embroidery thread, wide variety of things that you could use for that. You could even use a piece of wire if you had some bendable wire. And anything that you use, it will just create a different look, and that's cool. That's great. If you had pictures of people, you could use those as the flaps or as your accordion pages as well. That's a fun idea that I've done before. So when you open it up, you just have cascades of headshots. Maybe for someone's birthday, you could have a shot from each year maybe, or each decade, depending on who you're giving the book to. This would be a fun idea to see how people change over the years in a flip accordion book. So again, double knot it and simply trim off the edges. It's looking great. So this is really the inside of our tea bag holder book. And there's the front. And what we're going to need to do is I want to put an image on the inside. So when you open it up, there is just not a white piece of interior of the tea bag holder. And using my magazine trick, get a clean page, glue, and we're just going to stick it down on that front section. If you didn't want to have this as a front section, you could just leave it blank, or if you're inside, you could draw on it, or you could have your to from on this little inside page as well. You could add a little pocket there, and I've shown you how to do pockets in other videos. That would be a fun little thing to add there. Again, just trimming a little bit so everything lines up. And there we are. So this book actually fits in by just gluing it. And I just have to be careful because the edges of my pink pages, do stick out, and I would just need to ensure that when I fold it over that they will fit into the creases. And I'm folding all the little places that I marked with the score tool, and it has the same width on the front and the back to hold the paper, and you'll see that in a minute. So see, oh, that was quick, but on the when you see the edges, you'll see that they're the same. So now we're going to do this little closure, I guess. We want to make sure we add that to the journal. I'm going to do that before I glue down my book. And you can really create this out of a wide variety of things. I am just simply going to be using a rubber stamp stamped on the paper, my scrap paper that I had cut out from my cover, just in a black stamp pad. And I picked this shape because it's round, and I'll cut that out and use those two things for the closure. But if you could sew a couple buttons on there. If you just had a couple of brads that I'm going to be using to connect here, you could just use the brads and not make it any extra than that. You don't have to use circles. In my other example, it was more of a stop sign or a pentagon shape. So literally just cutting the flower shape out as close to the flower as possible, but leaving a little bit around it so not to cut the flower itself. And you just need 2 of these. I stamped 3 because my first stamped image wasn't very good. And when you think about making these books, I think you'll enjoy making one and then making another one again and seeing how you can improve what you did from the first one. Maybe by adding a different color or a different theme, by creating maybe more interior pages. You could have those pink pages that I added there, you could have that at every single fold on the front and the back. And opening up a book like that would just be amazing. That would be just so wonderful to get or to give. I'm using my awl to poke a hole in the center of the flower, and I'm going to be using an awl to attach it. Now, I made a mistake here, and I shouldn't have put my image, I shouldn't have glued my faces down before I did that. I should have done my closure first and then glued on my my last face to add to that cover, in front inside cover. The next one, I do the same thing. Use an awl, poke it in the middle of the flap, poke it in the middle of the flower, and attach it with a little brad. Brads you can get off Amazon for sure, but at craft stores, if your craft stores are open, they would sell little brads. I haven't checked the dollar store, but it seems like something the dollar store might sell. And sorry that's off screen a little bit. And I'm going to be using my wax linen thread again, so it matches the other thread in my book. You don't have to use this. Again, you could use a wide variety of string or nylon cord or elastic cord, whatever you might have. You go underneath one of the brads and just tie a double knot. It's a little bit tricky. My hands are really covering that, sorry, but I'm literally just tying a knot and slipping it underneath and giving it a bit of a tug and then doing a double knot and trimming off the extra. This is a really fun way to close any of your handmade books that you're doing, or if you're wanting to do a enclosure inside a book that you make, you could take an idea like this and it could be an envelope or a flap inside your book that has this really neat closure. So it gives your book more dimension because you have to open up something, which is always a really exciting thing to do in a homemade journal. So these are just like the envelopes that you would get that you have to crisscross, and that is how you tie those. Now with that done, I am going to glue the pages into the book. I'm being lazy and I'm not using my glue pad magazine. I'm just gluing it right onto here because I know if I get glue there, it's going to be covered anyway. I find glue stick is the best tool for this type of small project because there's not a lot of wait time in between and the pages will dry flat. Sometimes when you're using white glue, you'll get creases if you don't keep them really flat when they're drying. Push it down. If you have a bone folder, you could use that. And I actually got it in the wrong spot, so I have to move it up a bit. As I said, I had to make sure that my inside booklets, the pink pages, had enough room, and I didn't listen to myself clearly and had to move it. So I lined up my book page accordion with the front part of the tab and re-glued it down. And now I don't have enough glue. But it's going to work out once it's all done. No one will know that I've moved that, and the book is pretty much done. So now you can see I've left that room, that gap, and it will be able to close really nicely. And just wiping off the extra glue and close that, wrapping that around. But the book's not done yet. So as I said, I'm making this a motivational book. And an easy idea, if you don't like writing or playing around with hand lettering, is to find words from books or magazines. And that's what I did here. In the other book that I made that you saw earlier with the colorful one, this one here, I cut out sentences or parts of sentences from an old book and created a different story. But for this one, I just wanted words, maybe words of inspiration, positive words. Definitely want something to cover that brad that I messed up on my front interior. So this is a magazine like I use it for my gluing, and I just am going through it looking for fun words or parts of a sentence or a phrase. My tip is always flip to the other side of the page before you start cutting in case there's a nicer word or saying on the other side that you don't want to cut through. So this could be, you could use newspaper for this. You could even use the flyers that come in the mail, old magazines, old books. It's a great idea to get to secondhand stores to find different books. And just for things like this, dictionaries are also a great book to have, obviously book, but a great book to have to grab out different words or not sayings, but words or meaningful words, depending on the theme of your journal. So again, I'm just going through here a few. I'm not going to go through and show you how to cut them all out, but there's some really nice words in here. And they seem to really blend well with the style of image that I had in the book that I'm creating. Sometimes you get caught up in old magazines. I think I've said this before in videos, looking at, in this case, recipes and different things like that. But for the most part, just get your knife and cut away. I mean, if you've had an old magazine for that long anyway, you don't want it hanging around any longer. Let's get parts of that magazine into a project. So Feel Free is another one. And you'll be amazed at how many words that you can actually find in magazines that are not even supposed to be related to something that you're working on in a craft project. Live every moment. How nice. And we don't have to have that in a non-alcoholic beer ad. We can use that in a nice motivational journal. Anyway, lots of different things to look at in old books and magazines. Mindful is another very nice word. I actually don't think I used this one in the end, but I'll use it in another project for sure. This is a really great way of using different fonts. I love fonts without having to have to write them all yourself. So the next fun part of this journal is trying to figure out where you want the words that you've just cut out of your book. So, or out of your magazine or your book or whatever you're getting your words from. If you decide to write your words on, great, that is awesome. If you decide to write words on a different piece of paper and then glue them into your book, that's awesome too. So I'm definitely covering up that brad with my believe, and you can still see the brad a little bit, but it's disguised a little, so I feel better about that. But as you go through, do you want to create a sentence? You just want to have different words based on the theme? Really have some fun with this and decide what you want to do depending on the theme of your book. So I am just having fun laying it all out. I don't put any in the flapped area, the pink flapped area, but I trim and I'll be gluing it all down. This is a place where you're really going to make the book your own because you've created words or cut out words from a wide variety of sources, put them all together, and voila, it is your own creation that you're either going to keep or give away. I was really happy with the words I found, and here we are just gluing them down. I put one on every page, but you don't have to. They don't have to be straight. They can be whatever way you want. There's lots of ideas too. If it was for a gift, again, you could use the person's name. You could cut out individual letters. And I'm deciding mindful or love, and I went with love. Just seemed to have a nicer ring to it, and the pink matched my pink on the pages. So that's it. Now what I wanted to finish off with was to show you how to make the book a little bit more worn. So we can see how I added black around the edges and distressed it. And a lot of people do this on the videos, you'll notice, and it just adds that extra little bit to your book, makes it look more professional. It gives it a little more dimension and character. I'm using a round tip marker, black, and I'm going just on the edges. You could use a Sharpie pen if you had it, or any color of marker. I tend to use the blacks and browns when I'm making it distressed, but you certainly don't have to. If you wanted to have like a bright red around this would have been nice as well. And the more you go over it, the more it will be accented. And tilt the pen in a wide variety of ways. So I got too much ink there, but it still looks really good. There's not any right or wrong when you're distressing your artwork. So that's always nice to remember. So if you think you've really messed up, you haven't. You've just distressed it a little bit different than you might have wanted to. But in the end product, it will be amazing and you'll be really happy with it. So I'm just going through all the edges with this black pen. It doesn't look like much, but when you saw, if you went back to the before and then you see the after, you can really see that adding a little bit like this does a lot. And people can use, or people do use stamp pads, so you could stamp the edges in a stamp pad. You could use, you'll see me use chalk in a minute to distress the front covers a little bit more. And it really is up to you to find out how much you wanted to distress it. You could add the black marker on there, and then you could take some sandpaper or a rough surface and scratch it off so some places look like it's been really distressed. So once you're happy with the black marker or stamp pad or whatever edging you're going to use, you can use some chalk, some stamp pads, to make the front cover even more worn and shadowed. So here I'm taking some chalk and dipping it into a brush and rubbing just randomly over the cover of the book. And you can see that it's shadowing it. I'm going over definitely the creases in the book, and this will give it a nice vintage feel as well, distressed feel, whatever you want to call it. And again, just highlights the really nice aspects of your book and makes it a little bit more professional. I'm even using my finger to get some more color in there. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty in any crafting project. It's nice to have your hands inky. The only thing is when you're dealing with white paper, it's frustrating having such black inky fingers. This black stamp pad I'm just going over again just for a different color, and it doesn't look like a lot again, but when you look back you can see that it does really accent it and it does change the look of the little book a lot. Here's the stamp pad technique. You can go and use a stamp pad to go over the edges if you didn't have a black marker, or if you just wanted to accent some areas a little bit differently. You can go and push the stamp pad directly onto the front, which I'm doing in that corner. Again, look at your book and realize where would it get distressed normally. Normally in the corners, the edges, where people would be holding a book, that's where it would be distressed. Going over all the crease lines is also a good tip. And if you don't have a black stamp pad, again, you could use any color of stamp pad, but I tend to use the blacks and the browns for distressing my work. It's hard to close the book when you have such an inky finger. And tying it up is the final little stage. And there you have it. If you can believe it, that actually was made from a tea bag holder. Don't throw out your tea bag holders next time you have a tea. Just save it for when you're wanting to do a craft project. This is a fun mini book. Fits in a mint tin. I tied a double knot on my book there just to make the end of the string a bit more finished. And that was my sample I was going on. I added washi tape to that one, and I could have added washi tape there, but in the end I'm really happy with my book. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Till next time.